All right, Bull Runners, welcome back to the channel. So it was important that I played this clip from Jerome Powell to kick this video off because it sets the tone for what's going to happen. I'm going to explain this in this video because we see these major exchanges getting ready to go public, and Gemini is actually founded by the Winklevoss twins. They filed their S1 registration statement with the SEC August 15th, just a few days ago, aiming for a public listing on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol GEMI. And it would position them as the third major US-based crypto exchange to go public following Coinbase and Bullish exchange. And so they disclosed this credit agreement with Ripple Labs right here, providing access to a revolving credit faculty of up to $75 million with the potential of increase here, backed in part by Ripple's stablecoin RLUSD. And so this arrangement isn't direct equity funding, but it's rather a borrowing mechanism to enhance their financial position ahead of their IPO. And so if Gemini's doing well as an exchange, well, why would they need funding from Ripple? Great question. Well, they reported increasing net losses actually in recent quarters, with their cash reserves standing at approximately $162 million as of mid-2025, contrasted against their $2 billion in liabilities. And so by borrowing money from Ripple, specifically with their stablecoin, which operates on both the XRP Ledger and Ethereum network, it allows Gemini to borrow in a stable crypto form. And this is actually an extremely important use case here because this marks one of the first public issuances of Ripple extending banking-like services to institutions using RLUSD, which would enhance cross-platform interoperability and liquidity for Gemini's operations. For an exchange like Gemini, which is pretty big, they had a valuation of $7.1 billion. Their user base is over 523,000 monthly transacting users. They serve over 10,000 institutional clients, and they operate in over 60 countries. So it's going to allow them to reduce reliance on traditional banking partners, and it's going to deepen their collaboration between Ripple and them, potentially positioning Gemini as a key player in the evolving XRP Fi by tying into Ripple's credit and stablecoin infrastructure. And it plays a role into what we're going to talk about throughout the course of this video that you need to pay attention to because of what Sal Gilberti, who's the CEO of TechRealm, talking about the biggest catalyst for Ripple and XRP. Listen to this.
Biggest XRP catalyst that you think will happen. I mean, the banking license, one, sure, for Ripple. Obviously, we've already seen quite a few, but there's also involvement in potentially a SWIFT movement in terms of cross-border payments. What would be your catalyst that you think would move the market?
I think those are both catalysts. I think that it's hard to say. If they get approved as a bank and then announce they're not going to sell any more XRP onto the market because they want to capitalize the bank, I think that would be an enormous impetus for price. That's gigantic. But then I think as SWIFT breaks down and ISO 222, I think that they're not projecting SWIFT to use it for a few years yet to be totally compliant with that. Whereas I think that when Ripple flips all the switches and all these NDAs they talk about come alive, and when you start seeing banks announce, we did this much on the blockchain ledger in terms of moving your money, and we did this much on SWIFT, and the SWIFT is going down and blockchain's going up. I think that's a big deal. And there's another point to be made here for the economy as a whole. Most people don't understand that banks have to keep capital in both places. If you want to send money from Miami to Tokyo, okay, banks have to have money in Tokyo and money in Miami under the current system. That all goes away. All that capital is going to be freed up with the blockchain. That's going to burnish the bank's balance sheets even more. But more so, they're going to be able to loan money. They're going to be able to finance their trading desks. It's going to open up so much capital to economic growth in general around the globe. It's a wonderful thing. The blockchain is literally going to open up value because it's going to unlock a lot of frozen money on the bank's balance sheets. And that's really important. Nobody seems to be talking about that.
So the main thing that has been slowing everything down is obviously lack of regulatory clarity, the SEC lawsuit, but now we're seeing that page turn in the book. We're going to see adoption on a whole nother level over the next few years. Listen to what Monica Long said here.
It feels like the floodgates are going to open this year, doesn't it? I mean, so within the past week, a couple weeks, so SAB 121 being called back or rolled back. And I mean, within, it felt like minutes, you hear from CEOs like Bank of America saying, we're all in. And, these are institutions that Bank of America was one of our early partners when we were doing kind of like the messaging software only payment solution. So we've worked with these types of banks for a long time, and the lack of clarity. And I mean, I think in the more recent time, even hostility toward, hey, using these assets and this technology is not okay. It's dangerous. which is not the best way to handle it, as we would say. But looking forward, I would say, yes, it seems like there's going to be a sea change this year. And even I could say post-November, the US election result, even just the ongoing conversations we've had with banks around being reserve bank or transaction banking partners for the stablecoin or for our payments business, like the tone and message changed overnight. Like it was quick.
And so this brings me to one of the most important documents for Ripple that will completely change the game for them, and that's their National Trust Banking Charter application here. So as you already know, Ripple applied for a National Trust Banking Charter with the U.S. Office of the Comptroller of the Currency on July 2nd, and this would allow them to operate as a federally regulated limited purpose trust bank focused on blockchain-based custody and payment services, primarily for business-to-business operations. And so this move is a part of Ripple's overall strategy to integrate its cryptocurrency XRP and their stablecoin RLUSD into the traditional financial system. And they're essentially seeking regulatory clarity and direct access to the Federal Reserve payment system. So here's some key details of the application that you need to know. Number one would be the purpose of it. The charter would allow Ripple to regulate its RLUSD stablecoin. Through the Genius Act Donald Trump signed, it's already going to happen, but they're going to be able to provide custody services for tokenized assets, bypassing intermediary banks for faster, cheaper transactions. And Ripple's subsidiary Standard Custody also applied for a Federal Reserve master account to hold RLUSD reserves directly with the Fed, enhancing its integration. And this is why Ripple has brought on so many experts on their team, like Tim Keeney, who's the former vice chair of BNY Mellon, to help them out in a bigger leadership role. And he worked at BNY Mellon for over 25 years, where he was the vice chairman from 2012 to pretty much the present. And this whole entire application right here, that's about 27 pages long, has faced significant pushback from major banking institutions and different trade groups, opposing the charter, citing the unclear crypto regulations and insufficient public review times, arguing that crypto firms like Ripple lack transparency and may introduce financial system risks. It's very clear that they're threatened here. And why is that? Well, it's because it would allow Ripple to pretty much bypass their monopoly that they have over the US financial system. So this is much bigger than Ripple just becoming a bank here. This is about Ripple holding the master key for international finance. Because as you guys know, the Federal Reserve is already private. You know, Donald Trump has had his bouts with Jerome Powell arguing about interest rates. And he can either choose to listen to Trump and do it or not. And clearly he's been making his own decisions, showing how they operate independent from what the president of the United States wants. So what this would do for Ripple is absolutely insane, because it would gain them federal oversight and legitimacy, which is why we're seeing massive clapback from all these other banks. And the Senate passing the Genius Act this year is providing clear rules for stablecoins. In this document right here, specifically from the White House, talking about strengthening American leadership in digital financial technology. This was released earlier this year in January. But this basically advocates for digital asset firms like Ripple to access Federal Reserve accounts and offer services like custody and tokenization. So when you combine that with Ripple's application here, with what Donald Trump has been doing, signing these executive orders, it's no coincidence here why we see people like Tom here, I don't even know how to say his last name, Zashak, Chief Innovative Officer over at Swift here. His LinkedIn profile says, unlocking digital finance, 77.7% complete. And in his About section, it says the infrastructure behind money is evolving fast, but not everyone knows how to navigate it. I work at the intersection of traditional financial systems and the next generation of tokenized value and emerging technologies. And he commented on a post right here made by a guy named Franz Steinbe, saying the end of business-to-business payments rates, Ripple's $200 million checkmate when they purchased Rail. And so why did he comment here saying another checkmate moment? Could Ripple be playing a major role here? I mean, he's the Chief Innovation Officer over at Swift, which, as you already know, is short for Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. It's the dominant global network for financial messages. And some sources are suggesting that Swift handles around 5 trillion funds per day. This translates to roughly $1.25 quadrillion per year, based on 250 business days, not even 365 days. And so if in his profile, he's putting 77% complete, and in his About section, he's saying he's working on the intersection of traditional finance systems and the next generation of tokenized value. What do you think that means? I don't know how much more obvious I can make it for you guys, because during the coexistence period for customers and banks that can decide when to enable ISO 222 for cross-border payments. Well, the banks that are getting a jump on the gun right now have been integrating over the past few months, but they have until November for end-to-end integration here. And I don't know, could that be what Tom means when he says 77.7% complete here? And the remaining completion is going to be something tied to the ISO 222 implementation globally by November of this year? Well, that would make sense to me. So if that's the case and we're seeing all this massive stuff happening behind the scenes, well, what's happening with the price action on the chart? Well, if we look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin has pulled back over the weekend from 124, almost 125K, now sitting at $116,000. And if we look at the open interest suite right here, that shows the amount of leverage on the table, still in an uptrend right here. So I don't see anything out of the ordinary. You know, Bitcoin's holding on top at these previous highs right here, one around $112,000. You can see it dipped into this zone right here and then bounced to the upside. And so we're in good territory here. You know, as long as we're staying above $108,000, $109,000, I don't personally see anything out of the ordinary or bearish here for Bitcoin. It's holding up very strong above $100,000.